All right, guys, so good evening once again. And so today's topic is ratio and proportion. The previous topic that we looked at was percentage. And you should have gained some knowledge from what we would have done in previous class of how to solve various questions as it relates to percentage. All right, so we're now moving to ratio and proportion. And then now we will see how the ratio and proportion relate to what we have been doing so far. All right, now we have been looking at topics such as fractions, decimals, percentages, and now we're looking at ratio and proportion. Now, if you take a moment and think about it, you'll realize that all of these topics that we're looking at, they fall under which type of number in the number system. All of these topics fall under which, what number are we working with in the number system, students? All right, so let me call.
Counting numbers. Counting numbers.
Not counting numbers. Miss Trivia, fractions.
Yes, sir.
Decimals, percentages, and ratio. Type of number we're working with?
Is it real number, sir?
No, not real number. Miss Shay, what type of number are we working with? All right, nobody's giving me any answer. Miss Lang?
Is it rational?
Rational numbers.
Okay, so the question is it rational number? Who says what rational? Let me see the answer who says rational. Miss Lang? Who else says rational? Students, I'm waiting for your response. All right, you can lower your hand, Miss Lang. Anybody else? Students, I'm not getting the feedback that I want from this class. Miss Taylor, what type of number have we been working with so far? Miss Trivia? All right. So is it that your hands are in agreement with what Ms. Lang has said?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, yes. So if you have been paying attention, you would realize that all the numbers, all the different topics that we have explored so far from fraction come right down, they're all dealing with rationals. Can anybody remind me of what a rational number is? Let me ask specific persons. So, Ojeno, can you remind us what a rational number is?
Whole numbers that can express as a fraction.
Anybody else agree with what Ojeno has said just now? Is that?
Sir, I
sir.
agree with
Yes, sir.
you.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Way, someone say raise your hand. What it is that you want to say?
Sir, I'm agreeing with Jenna, sir, because rational numbers are fractional numbers. So it's numbers that can be expressed as fractions.
Right, so it's not just whole numbers that are expressing as fraction. Because if you express a whole number as a fraction, how do we express whole numbers as fraction?
putting them over 1, sir.
Right. Would that give you a description of what rationals are, a full description? To write whole numbers as fraction, would that be a description of rational? So,
No, sir.
no, it would not be a full description of rational. So what are rational? Rationals are any number that can be written with a numerator and a denominator, all right? And it doesn't just limit itself to whole numbers, because we have different types of fractions. We have proper, we have improper, we have mixed, we have decimals, all of those, and percentages, all of those are actually different types of rational numbers. All right, so one of the reasons why I would have mentioned earlier when I started teaching this term was that definitions, laws, and principles, there are things that you have to be familiar with. You have to get intimately connected with the definitions, because you see, maths is not just doing calculation without knowing what you're doing. You have to know what you're doing. And in order to know what you're doing, you have to familiar with words and their meanings, right? And in maths, we have specific meanings when we are dealing with a concept. So if you are not given the full meaning of the concept, it means that you don't fully understand the concept. All right. And when you don't fully understand the concept, that means you're not able to fully apply the concept in its correct form. All right. So I'm saying to you, spend some time, look at the notes, look at the definition, learn them, students. They are not just there. I didn't spend all that time posting notes and all of that for you to have them sitting there without using them. You have to spend time, read them and reread them, and allow them to sink deep in your memory, so that when I ask questions like these, we are able to respond in the correct way. All right. All right. So ratio and proportion is yet another topic relating to rational numbers. All right. And our objective for this topic, you should be able to define ratio. You should be able to express any given ratio into its lowest form. You should also be able to calculate the unknown parts to any given ratio. And you should be able to divide a whole in its proportional part. So that's what this topic will be dealing with. So these are the objectives. All right. So we're starting off with definition for ratio. And we say that this is a method of comparing similar quantities. And one thing to note, ratio has no unit. All right, so when we say comparing similar quantities, what we really mean is that we are comparing shares in terms of quantity, in terms of the size of the shares. All right, now, so we can start it off looking at, say, for instance, we have a pizza, and it is cut up into, say, 8 parts, right? Now, if you buy a pizza and you have a friend and you have eight slices to the pizza, then it's your pizza and you can decide to share the pizza how you want to share it. Can somebody give me an idea how you would actually share the parts with your friend? How many parts you take for yourself, and how many parts you give your friend? Miss Wesa.
Half and half, sir. So 4/8, 4/8.
Okay. All right. So if you share it half and half, then compare the share in terms of what ratio? So if you have how many parts in all, you would have?
8, sir. 8 parts.
And you're sharing it in equal parts. You give your friend 4 and you get 4. Then your ratio would be in the share of 4 to 4,
Mhm.
which is normally written in this way. Now,
Yes.
this symbol that we have between the 4, well, in English language, this is known as a colon. This colon means 2. And so when we write that colon, you should read it as 2. So 4 colon 4 means 4 to 4, meaning that the share, you give one person 4 and you give the other person 4. Now, ratio, as we say, can be related to fraction because you're now looking at how much part each person gets as a share of a whole. Now, if you get 4 parts and your friend get 4 parts, in a similar way, how you would cancel down ratio, you can actually cancel down, in a similar way you cancel fractions, you can also cancel ratio in the same way. So what you would do, you would look for a number that can divide each of the ratio, the highest common factor, and you can divide them through by the highest common factor. So if you divide 4 by the highest common factor, what would you use as the highest common factor? Miss Wasom?
4, sir.
Right. So if you divide 4 here by itself, you will get 1. And you put back the colon. And if you divide this 4 over here by 4, you would also get 1. Now what we have here is that the same 4 to 4 ratio now becomes 1 to 1. So 1 to 1 would be the simplest form of this ratio, meaning that just as how you would simplify a fraction in its simplest form, this is how you would simplify a ratio in its simplest form. All right, which other way we could have probably shared the pizza without sharing it equally? And I'm asking you, Ms. Wilson, because you started off this topic. Go ahead.
Could be sharing it. I'm getting 6, sir, and the other person getting 2, so it would be 2 to 6.
All right, so it depends on who you want to start with first. You may want to start with your friend's share, or you want to start with your share. It doesn't matter. So if you say 2 to 6 or 62, 6 to 2, it would still mean that you're sharing it in these 2 parts. So if you say 2 to 6, then it means that your friend would have gotten 2 parts and you would have gotten 6. And if you simplify this ratio, what would it simplify to?
1 to 3, sir.
All right, so this would have been simplified to 1 to 3. Now, when you simplify a ratio in its simplest form, all it means that you're just writing another form for what the ratio was. So 2 to 6 and 1 to 3, they are the same ratio. Right? So if you want to say that they're equivalent ratio, because if you simplify 2 to 6, you're still going to get what? 1 to 3. All right, so we can have ratios in its simplest form. Now, most of the time when we write ratios, we generally have them in their simplest form. And so based on those forms, you may be given calculations to do. All right, so everybody's following so far. Let me see your hands if you're following and you're understanding. All right. So, yes, Mr.
Sir, I can go back on things, sir.
Ms. Green?
Yes, sir.
Yes, what's your question?
I was just saying if you can go over again, sir.
Okay, no problem. So I was saying that ratio, it's within the same family as fractions, but instead of looking at ratio based on denominators, we're not looking at it based on the denominators now, but we are looking at it based on the share of the whole, right? Now, when we're looking at fractions, we will take that part that we are concerned with and we put it over the total number of the total number, which is the denominator, right? And so that's what we do when we are writing fractions. We are seeing how much parts we have out of the whole. But for ratio, we are looking at how the parts are shared. Now, so as we were saying, if you have a pizza and it consists of say 8 slices or even more slices than just 8, but you decide to share it with your friend, Miss Green. So if you have a pizza with 8 slices and you're sharing with your friend and you bought the pizza and all of that, how would you share it? How many slices you give to your friend? How many slices you keep for yourself?
2 to the friend, sir.
Two for your friend and the rest would be for you, right? So it means that you would have shared your pizza in the ratio of 2 to 6. So that's what the share is, right? And we use this symbol here, which is the colon, to mean 2. All right, so when you see the colon, it really means 2. So this means you have a share of 2 to 6, 2 for your friends and 6 for you. Following so far, Ms. Green?
Yes, sir.
Right, so I was also saying that just like a fraction, we can simplify ratio in their simplest form. And to do that, what we do, we find a number that can divide each of the share without a remainder. So in other words, we can search for the highest common factor for 2 and 6, the highest number that can go into 2 and 6, and we use them to cancel, just like how we cancel fraction. So what's the highest number that can go into 2 and 6, Ms. Green?
Is it 2, sir?
Right, 2. So it means that we can divide each of these share by 2 in a similar way like how we cancel. 2 into 2 go 1. And 2 into 6 goes 3. So now the same ratio that was 2 to 6 would now becomes 1 to 3. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. So so that's the general idea behind sharing in terms of ratio. All right, so another thing that I had mentioned about ratios is that the ratio has no units. Anybody have any idea what that would mean for your answer in ratio?
Sir, it wouldn't be when you said no unit, meaning there's no centimeter, meter, gram, and so forth.
Right, so there's no unit of measurement that you would write for a ratio. So you would only have an actual number when you're dealing with ratios. So there's no unit that you're going. So a matter of fact, even if the numbers started off with units, what will happen is that the units would cancel out. So there would be no units.